Just gonna see. Make sure we are live and cooking. Check our audio. And we appear to be all right. What's up, Alabama fans? You are here at Alabama Live Postgame on the voice of college football, Mark Rodgers TV. I'm Zach Ramilius as Alabama wins 63-14 over Southern Miss. Alabama, of course, moves to 4-0 on the season, and Southern Miss falls to 1-3. Take those out. That's just distracting, hearing my own voice in my ear. So, Alabama fans, that was more like it. Much more like it. The running game got going. The explosive passing game got going. Holy heck, there was some special teams play. Jameson, Williams, welcome to Tuscaloosa, brother. As Alabama wins 63-14. Leave your comments and reactions to this game. We're going to, like with the Mercer game last week, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, there's a little bit we can talk about with the Southern Miss game, specifically the run game, which we've talked about a lot lately. But we're not going to spend a ton of time on Southern Miss. Alabama did what they needed to do. They worked on some things. We're going to spend the end of the show previewing this game against Ole Miss next week. But to the Golden Eagles, right off the bat, Jameson Williams, 100-yard touchdown. Are you kidding me? That was awesome. Feels like every year Alabama has some guy back there that's going to return kicks 100 yards. And Jameson Williams is the new one. And you know what? He's still a kid, and he's going to be here for a while. So take that, rest of the SEC. We got a guy that can return touchdowns now. I have basically the box score at the bottom because I thought it was notable for all these stats because Alabama put up some numbers in this game. Leave your comments and reactions below to the Crimson Tide's win over Southern Miss. Tweet out the link real quick. Sorry for the break, folks. I'm just tweeting out the link as people start to pile in. Anybody in the chat? What a day of college football, huh? That was a lot of fun. We learned some teams are frauds. Absolute frauds. And we learned the Crimson Tide's probably the best team in the country. Isn't that wonderful? Then we're Georgia. I mean, Georgia looked pretty good today. They're playing Vanderbilt, but demolishing a team like that, even if it is Vanderbilt, is something. Let people pour into chat, talk a little bit about this game. How's everybody doing tonight? We got 3 viewers in the crowd, according to my thing. I'd say 2 on YouTube, 3 on StreamYard. Whatever. Doesn't matter. It's a party no matter how many people are here. A party of 1. But Southern Miss, we didn't think would provide too much of a test for Alabama. Before this, they played Southern Alabama, and they really struggled. Jake Bentley, yes, that guy is still playing college football. Crimson Tide fans. Jake Bentley. Remember when Alabama went to South Carolina in 2018, or they played, what was it, 2019 when they played Helinski? And because Bentley got hurt. Yeah, that guy's still in college football. Still playing college football. After transferring to Utah, yeah, he's back. But they struggled with USA. Beat Grambling, woohoo, and lost to Troy. So they weren't going to be any kind of test for the Crimson Tide. But we saw that a couple weeks ago with Mercer. Mercer wasn't going to be any kind of test, and they weren't. They really, really weren't. But we did see some themes that carried over to the Florida game, like the lack of explosive running game, lack of explosive plays, really, and that wasn't true in this game. A lot of explosive runs, a lot of big runs. It was nice to see Alabama running backs not averaging like 4 yards a carry. Last week was pretty bad at times in the swamp, but, Florida is just beating up on Tennessee right now. So maybe Florida's a good team, guys. I think we really were underrating Florida going into that game. But yeah, Rodell Williams, 10 yards a carry. Jace McClellan, 8.1 yards a carry. Last week, a lot of you in the chat talked about you'd still like to see Bryce Young run more. Now, I don't want to see him run more in this game because it's Southern Miss. And I don't want Bryce Young getting hurt before SEC West play really starts. But there was a couple times tonight I noticed that he could have taken off, picked up 7-8 yards. But when you were as efficient as he was, 20 of 22, 313 yards, must have just changed that. Because when I made the graphic, it said 312. Let me edit that. And the run game was doing what you were doing. There's no point in taking off. But it's not going to be like that every week. Maybe against Ole Miss, because we still don't know how good or bad their defense is. It's better than Oklahoma's defense against Tulane, but it's Tulane. They played Louisville. Malik Cunningham is not horrible, but still. So we don't really know how good Ole Miss's defense is, and they'll come to Tuscaloosa next week. But if you're coming out of this game, there's more positives coming out of this game than there was after Mercer. Because Mercer and those kind of games, it's hard to take positives. Because you go, we beat the crud out of them. Like we should. We're Alabama. They're Mercer. Congrats on that win over Duke in the NCAA tournament 7 years ago. This game, there were a lot of positives. The running game got going. Bryce Young was efficient. He looked really good and poised. Offensive line looked better. And I'm not comparing. They looked better than they did against Florida. Obviously, they looked better than they did against Florida. That goes without saying. But they looked better than they did against Mercer. So did the running game. So did Bryce Young. He did a nice job spreading the ball out tonight on those 20 completions. 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. 9 different receivers touched the ball. I know some backups came in and got some reps, and they got some touches too. Paul Tyson threw 2 passes, got 3 yards or 3 attempts to complete for 58 yards. Jalen Milroe completed a really nice pass at the end of the game for the final score to give the Crimson Tide the 63 points. Man, you can't be too mad about a 5-touchdown game from your quarterback. You just can't. But you guys in the chat, how do you think Bryce Young looked tonight? Are you more confident than you were in him last week when this narrative started coming out that, he might just be a game manager quarterback at this point? it did make me laugh seeing the comparisons to Aaron Rodgers because the the dude's a sophomore in college, and we're going to compare back of all time. Are you kidding me? That's a little ridiculous because ESPN had a couple shots of him throwing like off balance or throwing with whether it be sidearm or a 3/4 arm, throwing from different arm slots to like Aaron Rodgers. Like, no, I'm tired of this thing that they do where they try to hype up quarterbacks. But Bryce Young looked good tonight, and the Alabama team looked good tonight. Even the couple touchdown drives. I know no one's happy when Southern Miss is putting up points. But guys, they're Division I athletes. I know it's a lower Division I, but they're still Division I athletes. They're going to make some plays, and they just made some plays. They scored a couple touchdowns. Oh no! Because here's breaking news, guys. Ole Miss is going to put up some points next week. Last year they put up 38, and they're better this year. So they're going to put up some points. Now, again, they may not put up 38 because Alabama, I think, will control the ball a little bit better because I don't think against Ole Miss they're going to have the explosive plays that they did last year. They don't have the players that got all those explosive plays. And I don't think Ole Miss will have the explosive plays. I think you're going to see more drives in this version. Oh, they put up, excuse me, I said 38 points. They put up 48 points. I mean, Matt Corral last year, 21 of 28, 365, 2 touchdowns. Snoop Connor, 21 carries, 128 yards. Jerrion Ely, 19 carries, 120 yards. Each had 2 touchdowns. They're gonna put up some yards. They're gonna put up some points. I'd feel more confident about Alabama being able to match that without much resistance. Now, the run game, I know I can see on Twitter. We talked about it last week in the chat. The running game scared a lot of people because we're used to Najee Harris. We're used to Mark Ingram a decade ago. And before that, Glenn Coffey. That's how long I've been around. Trent Richardson, Eddie Lacy, TJ Yeldon, Derrick Henry, for goodness sakes. These guys that will just break off, long runs. And we weren't getting that from Alabama. Even in the Miami game, in the Mercer game, and especially last week in the Florida game, weren't getting that. So it was nice to see them break off some runs tonight. Wardell had a long of 55. McClellan broke off a 27-yarder, and that was their longs of the night. But constantly breaking off, constantly getting 5, 6, 7 yards a carry, it's pretty good. And that's something Alabama wasn't doing last week with Ryan Robinson, who was out. They rested him. It was with a rib injury. They did a good job. The offensive line looked better. Defense looked, like an Alabama defense against Southern Miss. And now next week they're going to get their toughest test against Ole Miss. And it's gonna be a fun game. But all right, guys, leave your comments and reactions as Alabama knocks off Southern Miss 63-14 in Tuscaloosa under the lights. I like when they show the little light show that they put on there at Bryant-Denny. It's really, really cool. Teams are getting really elaborate. What was it, Georgia, when they hosted Notre Dame a couple years ago? I dropped my phone. Had the cool one, and then Alabama had the cool one. And now you're seeing more teams do cool little light shows just to improve fan experience, which is something that I'm not here to debate. If you like, you're dumb if you like college football more than the NFL, or you're dumb if you like the NFL more than college football. But that is something I do prefer about college football, is the fan experience is a lot cooler than it is in the NFL. But and I think that's what kind of most people would argue, because obviously the players aren't as good. Duh. But anyway, and but it did make me chuckle because it was like, it's Southern Miss. We're putting on a freaking show, a laser show for Southern Miss. Who knows how many more night games Alabama's going to get this year? Presumably LSU, because that game always has to be at 7:00 on CBS. Ole Miss is 2:30 at Texas A&M. I'm going to assume will be 2:30. Mississippi State, who knows? Tennessee, who knows? LSU, probably 2:30 or 7. New Mexico State, who knows? And then Arkansas. That'll be interesting. We'll talk. We can, if leave your comments about what you think the rest of the SEC is going to look like this year, because there are teams that we all thought were going to be really good. Looking at you, A&M, who have kind of struggled, and then there's teams that we thought they still might be good, but they're going to go like 7-5 because the SEC is just so tough. And now look like they might be a pretty like the second best team in the West. And I'm looking at you, Arkansas. Looking at you. That was an impressive win today. Good job. Sam Pittman's got that thing going. But Alabama gets them at home, unfortunately, for the Razorbacks. So, but it's an interesting schedule here on out. After Miami, we looked at the schedule and said, okay, they'll beat up on Mercer. They should beat Florida. Southern Miss, Ole Miss, they'll beat them at home. At A&M, that's probably the toughest game. And then at Mississippi State, Tennessee, LSU, New Mexico State, Arkansas, and at Auburn. That stadium's kind of been Nick Saban's house of horrors, but with no Bix, they're going to probably not win that one. And now it looks really tough. Ole Miss is going to be pretty dang good. Florida was obviously a tough test. Even schools like even LSU could provide a little bit of a test here for the Crimson Tide. But they get a lot of their toughest teams at home. They get Arkansas at home. They get Ole Miss at home. And they get LSU at home. I'm kind of going all over the place here. We're here to talk about Southern Miss and Alabama, a 63-14 win for the Crimson Tide. You are here at Mark Rodgers TV, the voice of college football, Alabama live post-game. Leave your comments, questions, reactions, anything you want to know about this Alabama team and what their future looks like. We can talk about next week. We can ask any questions from this game. Guys, just let me know. I see you all in chat. You're all being really quiet. I'm a nice guy, I think. I got Blues gear on because tonight was the first preseason game. I didn't watch it because I'm not watching preseason hockey. But I thought I'd rep because it's nice gear. And hockey jerseys are a good way to look, especially when you're as ugly as me. What a day of college football, huh? Clemson lost. That was awesome. Oklahoma is fraudulent. Really, it's Alabama, Georgia, and the rest, it appears. So we have a long ways to go before we get to that game. Maybe someone else will rise up. Ole Miss, Arkansas. Kentucky. No, I'm just kidding. Even though Kentucky's not bad. They're 4-0 now. Good for them. Yeah, Southern Miss. Best of luck to them this year. Good on. They're at Rice next week, which, boy, you would really, really want a home game after playing in Bryant-Denny, wouldn't you? As a G5 team win. They at Rice and they'll play the rest of they'll play their conference schedule. And, they'll probably be okay. Southern Miss, as far as I remember, I know they had Nick Mullins. They're usually pretty decent. I know they've never been like in contention for a Power 5 or a playoff bowl game, but they're usually pretty good if I'm not mistaken. So no reason to believe they won't be. Just looking at last year's stats against Ole Miss, and it's ridiculous. Mac Jones, 28 of 32, 417 yards, 2 touchdowns. Najee Harris, 23 carries, 206 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And it wasn't like they were running up the score. It was like, oh, we got to get Najee the Heisman, kind of like they did with Derrick Henry sometimes in 2015, where it's like, just give him every handoff. He'll win the Heisman somehow, some way. We're at the 2-yard line, no play action with Jake Coker. Give it to Derrick Henry. He's going to win the Heisman. They needed every point from him. How'd Devontae do in that game? 13 catches, 164 yards. Jalen Waddle, 6 catches for 120 yards. That is about right, isn't it? Elijah Moore, 11 catches for 143 yards. Kenny Yeboah, oh my God. Folks, the good news for Alabama is both Kenny Yeboah and Elijah Moore are gone. So that's good. We're just looking at Ole Miss. If we have any questions, comments about Southern Miss, we shan't be done with that conversation. But I'll get into Ole Miss a little bit here. We've talked a lot about this game against the Golden Eagles. Alabama killed them. The running game looked awesome. But unless I get the go-ahead to do a midweek show, we're going to preview Ole Miss here a little bit. Matt Corral is awesome and probably one of your Heisman favorites, along with Kenneth Walker from Michigan State and Matt Corral, who we'll see next week. I don't know how Kenneth Walker looked tonight. I didn't watch a ton of that game, mostly because watching Nebraska gives me like a sickness where I start just laughing way, way too hard. Because it's funny. Because it is funny. I'm sorry. Someone messaged me about. Doesn't matter. Anyway, Bryce Young, he's in the Heisman race. He's going to be near the top because Alabama's going to be really gosh dang good again. But what does he need to do to get to that next level? What does he need to do to become the favorite? Because right now, I would say it's Matt Corral. And Matt Corral, 66 completing 68% of his passes, 9 touchdowns, no interceptions, 5 touchdowns on the ground, too. He's taken 33 carries for 158 yards. He's looked pretty good. Trayon Ely's also been awesome for them. Henry Parrish. It's going to be tough for Alabama to string together stops. But the important thing is when you do get those stops, you have to respond and you have to get touchdowns. The Heisman contenders, Kenneth Walker from Michigan State. I don't know what his numbers looked like tonight. I can actually pull that up real quick as I'm talking. Kenneth Walker from Michigan State. Matt Corral from 19 carries, 61 yards, no touchdowns. He might have taken a step back in that race. Anyway. But Kenneth Walker from Michigan State, Matt Corral from Ole Miss, who the Tide will play next week, and Bryce Young. I don't really know who else would be in the conversation. A lot of the hype around the preseason was Spencer Rattler from Oklahoma, and he's looked pretty. I mean, the Oklahoma chants were chanting for Caleb Williams. Their backup quarterback, 5-star freshman, number 1 recruit, Sam Howell, UNC, 2-2 already. Their season's pretty much over. They're 0-2 in the ACC already. So it's going to come down to Bryce Young and probably Matt Corral at 4 weeks into the season. Maybe CJ Verdell up at Oregon. He's had a nice start to the year and had a statement game at Ohio State. But that's what's going to make this Ole Miss game tough is you are going to face a quarterback who might be the best quarterback in the country. He just might be. And Alabama's only played one other quarterback that could play at a Power 5 level. I didn't think much of the Southern Miss QB, but more often than not, you're not gonna think much of a group of 5 quarterbacks against Alabama. And they played Emory Jones, and Emory Jones was okay. Emory Jones is a lot more mobile than Matt Corral. Not that Matt Corral is Peyton Manning back there or Tom Brady. He's not just going to stand in the pocket, but he's not as mobile as Emory Jones. He'll make some plays on the ground. But throwing the ball, Emory Jones, 18-28, 195 yards, 1 interception. He was fine. He made some plays, and Dan Mullen, we talked about it last week, schemed a really nice game plan for the throws he can make and the throws he can't make. But Matt Corral is much better at throwing the football. He had some issues early last year with interceptions, and that's something Alabama can maybe take advantage of. But this year, he hasn't thrown one. I mean, yeah, we can talk all we want about, we can force some picks, but if a quarterback's not going to throw picks, like last year, for instance, Matt Corral threw 14 picks. Including, was it 6 against Kentucky? Or was that the Mississippi State quarterback? I don't remember. But now I want the 2020 schedule. Oh, I have a 2020 schedule. But he's had issues in past years with turnovers. Something you're going to have to do again if you want to win this game. Yeah, 6 picks. And that wasn't Kentucky. It was Arkansas, which probably even worse last year. This year, sure. They look a lot. Arkansas looks pretty dang good. Leave your comments, questions, anything you want to know below as Alabama knocks off Southern Miss 63-14. They're getting ready to take on the Ole Miss Rebels, who are on a bye week, which is rough for the Crimson Tide. But I guess after playing Southern Miss and a lot of your starters got to sit for chunks of the game, Brian Robinson didn't play. You'll have some time to rest and recoup before you play Lane Kiffin. And that's the thing about that game too, man. Lane Kiffin is going to throw the kitchen sink at Alabama. He just is. Got a new comment. Is Texas back? I mean, maybe. They scored 70 today, which is pretty cool, but they lost to Arkansas, who looks like a great team. So, but this is an Alabama channel, sir. So I'm pulling your comment. If Alabama were to play Texas next week, how much would Alabama win by? 4 or 5 touchdowns? Well, Arkansas won by 4.5 touchdowns. So probably more. Probably more. What we were talking about with this Ole Miss game, Matt Corral has not fallen back onto those interception patterns. I mean, he did throw 14. Now, he only threw 8 in 9 games. It's 7-point spread. Because he threw 6 in 1 game. But Alabama's going to have to force some turnovers. They're going to have to make some plays in the secondary. Those guys are really going to have to step up if the Crimson Tide want to come out with a win against Ole Miss. Because I'm not worried about Alabama not being able to score. Ole Miss will be lucky if they stop Alabama 3 times. Let's say each team gets 12 drives. If they stop them 3 times, or 10 drives, 12 is a little much. 63 points. They stop them 3 times. Good job. I'll be stunned. But you also have to stop them, and Lane Kiffin is just gonna pull every rabbit out of the hat to try and win this game. Because, we've all heard the stories that no former Nick Saban assistant has ever knocked off Nick Saban. Now, we're going to have some chances this year. Lane Kiffin, Jimbo Fisher, which looks less likely after today, but still a possibility, and Kirby Smart come SEC championship time if those 2 teams should play. And we talked about that quite a bit last week, is with how Florida looked tonight and how they looked last week, Georgia isn't going to waltz to that SEC championship game like we thought. Now, Florida's going to have to beat them and then not lose another SEC game, because I don't think Georgia's losing to – I think they play Alabama. They don't have to play Auburn. Got another comment. Is Bama being held to 10 after the first quarter concerning? Yeah, and we talked about that quite a bit last week. What we were concerned about was They came out hot. Bryce Young looked great. And then the running, they weren't able to get anything going in the run game. There was no explosive runs. Brian Robinson had a long of 23, but other than that, it's only averaging 5 yards a carry. Jason McClellan, 9 carries, 17 yards. As a whole, Alabama was only averaging 3 yards a carry. They weren't able to, every time they were dropping back, it was 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9, 3rd and 7, which is a bad spot to put your quarterback in when he's so young, the receivers are young, and you're playing a really talented team with Todd Grantham, who's going to, we like to joke about Todd Grantham, but he's going to put Bryce Young in under pressure, and he did. And I think we're looking back and going, maybe Florida's just a good team. Maybe they're just a really good team. They had a great game plan, and they still lost. They gave it their best shot, still lost at home. I've talked about this with friends. Alabama's the only team in the country that can go on the road against a top, I think we can all agree, based on what we see in this college football season, especially today, Florida's a top 10 team. They are. Who in the top 10 is better? Oklahoma's not better. Oklahoma plays Florida today. Florida wins by probably 2 scores. They're not better. They're better than Iowa. Iowa's number 5 because they won 2 really good games against, they have 2 good wins over Iowa State and Indiana, which that win's looking less and less. In fact, how did Indiana do? This is the first time Indiana football has ever been mentioned at the same time as Alabama. Anyway, Indiana's looking okay, but they're better than Iowa. Penn State would be interesting. I think Florida would beat Penn State, but that'd be an interesting game. Sean Clifford, someone earlier asked about Heisman. Sean Clifford's in that conversation. For now, we'll see how he does against Ohio State in Columbus in a few weeks. Anyway, Florida's a top 10 team, and you went on the road, you won, and everyone's like, "Is Alabama finished? Like what is going on? They're not unbeatable." It's like, yeah. Nick Saban's the Alabama dynasty started in 2008, not 2009 with the title. It started 2008 with the undefeated regular season. And in that time, they've gone undefeated just in the regular season. What, 08, 09, 16, 18, 20. 5 times? If I'm wrong, let me know. But I'm pretty sure it's 5 times. They finished the season undefeated. Since 2008. They're not ever unbeatable. Now, it's going to take a great team to beat them. I mean, I had to put it in the banner below. They won 100 straight against unranked teams, which is ridiculous. It very well could be. I mean, I don't know how much, Spencer, you watch college football today, but a lot of these top teams look like garbage. I don't want to swear. They look horrible. Georgia looks dominant, even though we might have overrated their defense just based on Vanderbilt, whoever else they played, and Clemson, because the Clemson offense put up 14 against NC State and 14 against Georgia Tech. So maybe that wasn't the holy cow, this is an amazing performance by the Georgia. Maybe Clemson's offense just stinks. But Clemson's done. Their season's over, which is awesome and hilarious. Oklahoma looks bad, or not very good. I mean, they're squeaking by teams. Alabama really not going to have it. Is Alabama going to have issues with Iowa or Penn State? Ohio State just had a player walk off their team because he was upset and tweeted out a 4-letter swear, Ohio. So that's, it really might be Alabama versus Georgia again. Because at this point, we have to assume if Georgia and Alabama meet in the SEC title game, one will be ranked number 1, one will be ranked number 2. So if Georgia loses that game, they're not going to give Georgia the number 2 spot, but they're not going to drop them to number 4 and make it Alabama, Georgia in the first round. So at this point, I have no idea anyone that could challenge these two teams. Florida, yeah. Actually, we talked about that a lot last week. Florida might. Now, the issue Florida's going to run into is they still got to play LSU. They still got to play at Kentucky, which we might have overdone it with the Lee and Cohen and their QB. Might have overdone it with the hype. But that's not going to be easy. They play LSU still. They got Kentucky. Got a weird game in November at Missouri. They'll win that one, but that's still just going to be awkward. And they can't lose any of those games because they may beat Georgia, but if they lose again, they're not making the SEC title game because Georgia's not going to lose more than one SEC game. Their only chances would be Arkansas next week, which is going to be a good game, Florida, and then outside of Florida, and then Auburn, which, yeah, we saw what Auburn looked like today against Georgia State. Oregon. Yeah, Oregon. What impresses about Oregon is for so long, it's been the Pac-12 is soft. Every time the Pac-12 goes up against the SEC just runs them over. Not the case with this Oregon team. They went into Columbus and out-physicaled Ohio State, which is something we don't normally see from Pac-12 teams, and they have a great running game. My only holdup with Oregon is their quarterback. I don't think Anthony Brown is all that good. I don't think he's a quarterback where, oh no, it's 21-7 Alabama. We need a touchdown here. And Anthony Brown's not going to be that guy to lead him to the touchdown, down the field. He's a fine quarterback. He does some really nice things. He can move. I don't think he's the quarterback that could knock off Alabama or Georgia. Because power run game is not going to work against Georgia, and you're not going to outspeed Alabama. So, but yeah, I mean, Oregon's a really good team. They should be in the playoff. It's going to take a choke job of epic proportions against some team like Washington State or in the Pac-12 title game against whoever for them not to make the playoff. Alabama's going to beat LSU. I mean, yeah, they'll probably beat them by like 4 or 5 touchdowns. LSU's bad. Even though today I'll give them a lot of credit because they ran the scheme against Mississippi State that works, but it's not going to work against Alabama. Because LSU has 2 or 3 corners that can play, are pretty good college corners. And if you just drop 8 against Mike Leach's team and you have a couple guys that can cover, you'll stop that off. It's what Washington would do to them every year. It's in the SEC channel. I could talk about the SEC all day. But Alabama, yeah, though, as long as the running game keeps improving, and tonight I think we definitely saw major improvements, they should have very little issue with LSU at home. Very little issue. Now Keyshawn Butte could cause some issues. He's a very good receiver, and we saw that today. But I don't think they are going to be any real issue for the Crimson Tide come November. Yeah, but here, Alabama postgame. If you have any thoughts on the game tonight against Southern Miss, you have any ideas about college football in general, I could be here all night, really. College football in general, or next week's game against Ole Miss, future Alabama games, whatever you guys want to talk about. I'm live. I'll be here until really I don't want to be. And who knows when that'll be because I got nothing to do tonight, and I don't know what I have to do tomorrow. I'm hanging out with a friend tomorrow to watch some football and check on my fantasy. Clemson's looking bad. Yes. What I think people are realizing, and there's another great YouTube channel called College Football Nerds. They do a really good job. In the past, Clemson's given teams issues, obviously, because they've had elite talent at wide receiver, a pretty good O-line, a really good O-line, and an elite running back. They don't have ETN. I think ETN was a bigger key to them being good than Trevor Lawrence. Because DJ last year looked really good against Notre Dame. And Notre Dame, Alabama scored the least amount of points they had all year against Notre Dame. They kind of played with their food in that game, but DJ looked pretty good. I think ETN was a bigger loss than people realize. And their offensive line is terrible. DJ has no connection with his receivers. And is Clemson going to the playoff? No, they're done. No need to worry about them this year, Alabama fans. 2-2, they're done. You lose NC State. If you had just lost to NC State and beaten Georgia, you'd still have a pretty good chance. But they're not even a guarantee to win the ACC this year, in my opinion. They're just not. Georgia Tech is no good. I know they're beating up on North Carolina right now, but they're no good. And so I don't even know if my top 4 after this week. Okay, so obviously you have Oregon, Alabama, Georgia. Not in that order. I would go Alabama, Georgia, Oregon. Although if you wanted to argue Georgia first, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. They're going to be neck and neck all year. But for 4th, I would have said Penn State, but Penn State, I don't know. They didn't look great against, and we're starting. Maybe Auburn isn't as good as we all thought. So right today, number 4. God, let me see the top 25, just because I think I know what I want to say, but I don't want to sound too stupid because I could just say Penn State and be like, okay, cool, and we'll wrap that one up. Honestly, number 4 might be Ole Miss. Just because I watched Oklahoma struggle with Tulane, and then I watched Ole Miss just do whatever they wanted. SEC champs, no doubt, if Georgia mans up. Yeah, that's going to be a fun game. It's really unfortunate that's at 11 a.m. I don't know who scheduled that. They need to be fired. Just kidding. They don't need to be fired. There should be a good one. And Alabama fans definitely are going to be tuned into that one because they'll play Arkansas second to last week of the season, and then they'll play Georgia potentially in the SEC championship game. Sam Pittman's got that thing cooking. They might be the second best team in the West, depending on how good Ole Miss is, and we'll see. They play each other in like 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. That's gonna be a really good game. It's gonna be a good day of that leading into Alabama, Ole Miss. It's 2 great games. Conference season is always so fun in the SEC because every week you're going to have 2 or 3 games that are just going to be awesome, attention grabbers. Even Florida goes to Kentucky next week. That might even be a halfway decent game. Why is Arkansas so good? They have so in college football, you need one good receiver, and they have one in Burks. You need a good running back. They have one. KJ Jefferson's not the best quarterback in the world, but he's mobile, and he does some really nice things, and Traylon Smith's a good running back too. And Barry Odom was not a good head coach at the University of Missouri. He had a lot of issues as a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator, strictly a D coordinator, he's going to be in the NFL before too long, or he might get another college job, but he's going to be in the NFL. He's awesome. I don't know if any of you remember, and I don't know why I remember, the 2015 Missouri team that couldn't score any points. Yeah, they were like 5th in points against. Barry Odom is a dang good coach when he's just coordinating and not recruiting. But and Kendall Briles is creative on offense. So that's why they're good. I think they have I think when Sam Pittman got hired, he put together an outstanding coaching staff. And they do have talent. Jalen Catalon at safety is pretty good. Bumperpool and Grant Morgan are good linebackers. So it's not like they don't have any talent. But I think together they put a magnificent staff. Bama ain't up to this year. Next year they'll be a force to be reckoned with. I mean, it's Alabama. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with every year. BG, who do you think they're losing to? Arkansas, Texas A&M. I know I just praised the heck out of Arkansas, but I don't think Arkansas is going into Tuscaloosa and winning. Not yet. Not yet. Yeah, I don't. I think Alabama. If they lose to Georgia in the SEC title game, they're still making the playoff. So I think they'll be just fine. Teams are allowed to improve. People are saying Alabama's going to lose to Auburn. Who is saying that and why? Because Auburn. Now, teams are allowed to improve from week 4 till the last week of the season. They're allowed to improve. What has Auburn done that makes you think they'll beat Alabama? I know Jordan Hare is a house of horrors for Nick Saban. It's the only stadium he can't seem to win in and win by 50. But we trust in No Bix or TJ Finley. Nah. They are a little shaky, but it's not as bad as last year. Last year's defense was worse. Now this year's offense is worse, which you lose as much as they did. Of course, it was going to be worse. Now last year's defense was not nearly as good as this one. This is a pretty good. This is getting back to like some pretty good defense. I know they gave up 29 points to Florida. Florida might be a really good team, guys. And they'll lose to Ole Miss, maybe. That's going to be a fun game. I think Ole Miss really wishes this game was in Oxford because I think it was in Oxford. I wouldn't say Ole Miss is a favorite. I wouldn't say Ole Miss is a favorite, but they would be pretty close to a favorite. Yeah, in Tuscaloosa, I think Alabama will take this one at home because I think their defense will get more stops than they did last year. I don't think they'll score 63 points, but I think they're going to get some stops. And Bryce Young's going to be able to score enough points where you're going to look at the end of the game and Ole Miss is going to score like 30 points. But Ole Miss would score 30 points on like 2012 Alabama. That's just how good they're schemed and how well they're coached. And Lane Kiffin's not going to hold anything back. So I do think it's going to be a pretty fun game. But at home, I think they got this. Although I'm looking forward to a bunch of games next week. We're starting to stop playing so many cupcakes. A solid crowd, hopefully. Goodness gracious, I hope so. Look, if you're Alabama, I know Alabama fans are a little tired of Southern Miss coming into Bryant-Denny, and it's 42-7 at halftime. I feel like these fans have been chomping at the bit, especially after no fans last year, for a fun home game that they should win, but maybe like LSU in 2019, which they lost. But this Ole Miss team is not that LSU team. They're not. So it should be a great crowd. Should be a sellout crowd. Should be loud. It should be a lot of fun. It should be a party next week. And I'm not one of those people who thinks like Alabama, for as good as their fans are, is one of those like, you got like your staples of college football, Madison, Wisconsin, LSU at a night, Virginia Tech is crazy loud, Oregon gets crazy loud. I've never been like Alabama's like one of those. They're just not. I think people are like, oh, they've won so many games at home. It's like, yeah, because they're pretty freaking good. But I think it'll be a really nice crowd next week. It should be. If Alabama fans can't get up for this one, I mean, goodness gracious. Spencer with some confidence against the Rebels. I like it. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Ole Miss quite a bit. What concerns you guys about Ole Miss? What concerns you guys about going into that game? Or what gives you hope against the Rebels? It should be a pretty dang good game. I don't know what the rankings are going to look like, just because, it's hard to tell with some of these jokers sometimes. Like Oklahoma should not be ahead of Ole Miss, or probably even Arkansas. I can't see Ole Miss jumping. Well, Notre Dame's going to go up. Florida will probably go up, and I can't see them jumping them. Ohio State will probably stay near the same. Clemson will go down. Cincy's not going to move. A&M will go down. Penn State will stay. Iowa will stay. Yeah, so I don't see them, but they should be like 10th, 11th, somewhere in there, and it should be a high profile matchup. Their QB, yes, we've talked about it. Matt Corral is probably my Heisman favorite at this point. He's been awesome, and he's avoided the turnovers like he did last year. He had 14 picks last year, including that 6 against Arkansas. I think there's a chance Alabama. I do think there's a chance Alabama can force some turnovers there. But yeah, he's a freaking good quarterback, and Lane Kiffin's a heck of a coach. Unironically, between me and you, chat, unironically, USC should hire Lane Kiffin or Miami. They like really should, but they're not going to. 52-39, we got a score prediction. we got a score prediction here from Spencer. That wouldn't surprise me. I think Ole Miss will put up some points. It's not going to be crazy like last year, but hypothetically, if Bryce Young gets rushed in Ole Miss game and gets hurt, guess what? Bama loses. I mean, how many teams in the country would you say that about? I mean, flip it. If Matt Corral goes out, what, John Reese Plumlee's beating Alabama? No. I mean, yeah. If Bryce Young gets hurt, Alabama's in a lot of trouble. I don't know how much they trust their other quarterbacks, but that's true with any team basically in the country that has a good quarterback. Their backup's Paul Tyson, who's fine. He's looked okay in limited play. Jalen Milroe runs like he's Cam Newton. He doesn't quite throw like Cam, but runs like he does. So, yeah, but how many college football teams do have a backup quarterback? Because if you have two quarterbacks who play, you don't have a quarterback. I mean, maybe the only one where if the starter went down would be okay is Oklahoma. But they're already calling for Spencer Rattler's head in Norman. So I think they'll be okay. If Bryce Young goes down, it happens. Injuries happen. But I can't predict that he's going to go down and say, yeah, obviously they don't have a backup. They don't have Jalen Hurts, Tua. Hey, when they split time with Jalen Hurts and Tua, guess what? Lost in the national championship. So, one of those things. Any more thoughts on this Alabama game versus Southern Miss? Next game against Ole Miss? Or anything future about Alabama and their schedule, the SEC? I mean, it's almost 11 o'clock where I'm at, so I'm not going to be on too much longer, but as long as you guys want to talk, I will be here. Because Alabama, rough stretch of games coming up. At Ole Miss at home, at Texas A&M, at Mississippi State, Tennessee, LSU. Basically, after next week, after Ole Miss and Texas A&M, Alabama will have about a month where they don't play anybody that should scare them. So that's when their chances to get right, really focus on the running game, and just keep getting better, work on the defense. Because then they end the year with Arkansas, who knows what Arkansas will be at that point. They have a lot of tough games, and Auburn. And then presumably an SEC championship game against Georgia or Florida. Should be a really fun season. It's the first season I can remember in a while where a lot of teams look beatable, and I don't know who is elite. I think Alabama and Georgia are elite, but they're not unbeatable. And other than that, I don't know. Clemson looks awful. Oregon doesn't have a great quarterback. Ohio State's defense couldn't stop an offense made of this chat. Me at O-line, obviously. I'll play left tackle. Ole Miss not beating Bama. What a story if they did, though, huh? Just kidding. No, I don't think they will. I've said that a number of times. But I think it's going to be a fun game. I think it's certainly worthy of SEC on CBS. better, and it should be. Last year's game really did feel like, yeah, Ole Miss was scoring a ton of points, but Alabama always felt like they were in control because they knew they were just going to score whenever they wanted. And as soon as Ole Miss kicked that field goal to make it 49-45, it was over because they weren't stopping Alabama twice, which is what they needed to do. For some reason, they kicked another field goal, a 29-yard field goal. I didn't remember that. Why would you kick it? All right, Kiff. Unless it was like 4th and 20 or something. Something I don't remember. It was 29 yards. It was at the 12. So I don't know if it was like 4th and goal from the 12-yard line or 4th and something. But if it was under 4th and 12, it probably should have gone for it. Anyway, but I don't think it'll be like last year's. I think it'll be kind of like last year's game where Alabama feels in control, but Ole Miss is going to put up some points because Ole Miss isn't going to stop Alabama twice. Unless their defense is way better than it was last year, like way better than it was last year. I think it's better. There's a difference between being better and way better because they needed way better to stop Alabama. I mean, yeah, I know Tulane scored 35 points against Oklahoma, and Ole Miss only gave up 21. But I'm not. Tulane is still Tulane. They might be a good team in their conference this year, and Louisville, they gave up 24 to Louisville, all in the second half for what it's worth. I don't know. I don't know if we can judge their defense quite yet. It was interesting in that Louisville game because Louisville was playing against air. Ole Miss was letting them play 7-on-7, and they were not just doing anything right in that game. So, who knows? I think their defense is better, but I am not certain, let's say. And even if it is better, I still don't know if it's good enough to stop Alabama, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Get a stop if they really need a stop. And part of my belief in that is tonight's game, which the running game finally got going. And Brian Robinson was out. And I don't think it's his fault, but man, did that running game look good tonight with McClellan. Well, McClellan and Williams, obviously. Williams was the bell. Well, it took 11 carries for 110 yards. Any more thoughts on Alabama and Southern Miss, or Alabama and the SEC, Alabama and the future schedule? Anything about the SEC in general? After another fun win. I mean, at some point, Alabama fans were tired of this, right? Just killing everybody. Be like a South Carolina fan. No, I'm just kidding. It's fun to murder everyone. And that makes the games against Texas A&M or whoever more special. This isn't going to be like last year's team where they murdered everybody. It's not. Except who didn't they murder? They didn't murder Ole Miss, and they didn't murder Florida. But they murdered every other team on their schedule. And I know murder is a harsh word, so let me rephrase. They murdered everybody. But I'm going to go for about 2. If you have any more thoughts on this game next week, Alabama, get your comments in the next by 11:05, 11:06. And then we'll finish those up and we'll wrap up here at the Voice of College Football, Alabama live post-game, Mark Rodgers TV. We're going to go ahead and start wrapping things up. It's past 11 o'clock now. Thank you all for being here tonight. I mean, I guess I can wrap things up a little bit. If you guys have any thoughts, questions, go ahead and just leave them, and I'll get to them. Any questions about me? I'd love to talk about myself. Zach, why is your beard so just mangy tonight? I don't know. I sat on my couch and watched football all day. And don't expect me to look gorgeous. I did shower this morning, which I don't know why I said it like, ooh, I showered. Good for me. I did because I knew what I was going to be doing all day. I'm so stupid. Yeah, the Crimson Tide win 63-14. I'll be here every week. I'll be here next week. Gosh, the SEC on CBS game is always weird because sometimes it ends at like 5:40. Sometimes it's not till 6:15. But you can check. You can be, if you're here, I'll try and come live about 20 minutes after the game. And come by. Let's have a chat. Next week should be a lot of fun. I see a couple more people calling in, so I'll add a couple more minutes. Get you any of your last thoughts, questions, reactions to the game, or thoughts about next week's game, thoughts about the schedule, anything you want in the next 3-4 minutes. I'll get to them, but then we're going to wrap things up because it's past 11 o'clock. And yes, I'm only in my 20s, but I am still tired because I got up early today because I am a functioning adult. Is it going to storm here? I thought I just heard thunder. So get your last comments, thoughts, reactions. I'm just kind of scrolling through, seeing what's going on in college football now. Arizona, yeah, they're going to get killed by Oregon. I'm shocked it's still a 2-possession game, to be honest with you. Yeah, I watched that game. God, I have no life. I watched that game. You know, Clemson, Alabama's biggest competitor for national titles over the last half decade is done. Their season's over in terms of winning a national title. Clemson's 2-2. Really the only team Alabama should be worried about at this juncture, because teams are allowed to get better as the season goes on. I think the only team that they should be really worried about is Georgia. And they have 8 games to play before they even have a chance to play the Bulldogs. So, you know, we'll see. Get your last comments, questions, reactions. We'll get to them. I'll stay as long as you guys have questions and comments. If you don't, then it's past 11 o'clock for me. I'll give you guys a couple more minutes to write anything in before I get off and go to bed. And by go to bed, I mean play on my phone for like 6 hours before I check on my fantasy team on my phone. My St. Louis Cardinals have won 15 in a row, so life's good for me right now. I got Blues gear on because tonight was their first preseason game. I didn't watch it because if I ever watch preseason hockey, just put a fork in my eye. I love hockey. It's my second favorite sport, but it's preseason hockey. It's like watching men's league or college hockey. Any last comments, questions, reactions to this game? Drop them down. Don't be afraid to say anything here. You're amongst friends, I think. I'm your friend, sort of. I'm your acquaintance that'll talk to you about Alabama football. Anything you want to know about the Crimson Tide. We've been going for about an hour. Holy cow, this went by way easier than I thought it was going to be. Not going to lie to you guys. When I came on, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to talk about that game for 45 minutes to an hour? Because, you know, Southern Miss. I mean, I could talk about the running game, and the running game getting going was a really nice thing. But Bryce Young played really well. But I can only talk about how well Bryce Young played. Jameson Williams, 2 touchdown kickoff returns for touchdowns. That's awesome. I talked about that at the beginning of the show. But only so much to talk about. Get your last questions in. I'll extend it. 11:10. If you have any comments, questions, reactions, thoughts, insults, ideas, did I get something wrong on my stats, which they haven't been rolling for a little bit? Are my glasses dirty? Yes, they are. Anything you guys want to know, you have now 2 minutes to put whatever you want in the chat. And I will get to all of it, well, for the most part. If it's just saying, we can only talk about how Alabama's going to beat Ole Miss, like, probably 2 or 3 more times. But I'll react to all of it, and then I'm going to hop off once 11:10 hits. Boy, what a fun show this was. You guys in the chat were awesome tonight. You guys were fired up about Southern Miss, which is cool. Because I assume most of you came from Mark or just have your eyes on the channel. Because I don't know how many of you follow me on Twitter. I tweeted out the link, but Mark never retweeted it. I should have added him. I don't think I did. I think I tweeted it while I was on air because I'm an idiot. And I didn't. I just wanted to get the tweet out. Poopsie daisies. You have 1 minute. Any thoughts, comments, reactions, questions, insults, compliments? Zach, you're doing a great job. Why, thank you. Anything. And after that, I'm going to go get some peach Gatorade because I don't drink soda anymore because I'm trying to lose weight. And I've lost about 40 pounds. Actually, more than that now. Close to 45 to 50 pounds. And I'm killing it. And I haven't drank a soda in 6 months. So I drink a lot of Gatorade, 0 now, because it's pretty good. Especially this like peach citrus peach or something. It's delicious. It tastes like a nice pina colada. All right, and it's 11:10, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. I'm Zach Remilius, and you're listening to Alabama Live Postgame at the Voice of College Football, Mark Rodgers TV. I once again want to thank Mark for just giving me this opportunity to talk about Alabama football. It's been a lot of fun. We'll be here every week. We try to go live within 30 minutes of the postgame. I want to make, like, you see the little ticker at the bottom. I want to make those. I usually want to go to the bathroom or something, grab a water, because I know I'm going to be talking. And next week, we'll be here till the sun goes down. As long as you guys are in chat and active, then I'll stay on and talk. Because, between you and me, I talk about college football to myself in the shower or when I go on walks or when I'm at the gym. So even if, 4 people are listening, I could talking back with me, I can talk for hours. So thank you guys all for being here. Subscribe, follow my Twitter at PsychoZ50 if you want more insane thoughts about not only Alabama football, but football in general, movies. I'm going to use that today. Anything. Subscribe to our main channel, Voice of College Football, Mark Rodgers. He does a great job talking about every team, breaking them all down. And we will be here next week when the Crimson Tide take on the Ole Miss Rebels at 2:30 on CBS. You all have a great rest of your night. You have a great week, and roll Tide.